at the time when I'd left Google, I was making $0. I could only get paid by Google. Anything else would, get me deported. And so I would just ask for like the biggest numbers. And I think like post quitting Google in the first 2 months, I did about over 400K in, do an event, come out and meet a bunch of people, and we lost track over 100, but 100, over 100. And then I think the attendee number was 20,000 people, over 20,000. One example is we worked with a hotel for 6 months, this 4-star hotel in New York. The typical event host would have to pay 15 grand per event to host at the hotel. We negotiated it to a point where they were paying us 6 grand for every event we would host. In its current form, I think this business has the potential to do, let's say, 3 to 5 top line a year.
How do you describe what you do? I think just saying like, you do tech events is probably only scratching the surface of like what you truly do. So like when you talk to your parents or your family or even people that you meet for the first time, like how do you kind of describe or encompass everything that you do?
Yeah, it's a good question, and honestly, it's really hard. I try not to label it. The only reason I'd want to label it is to make it sort of simple and valuable for someone else to understand. And so it really depends who I'm speaking with. If it's with founders, I tell them that I host founder dinners and I angel invest. If I'm talking to like mom and dad, I just say I'm an entrepreneur, and they kind of get it. But all they need to know is that I love it and that I can like sustain myself and pay rent
You make money, yeah.
yeah, make money
You're
basically.
not broke.
I'm not like starving. Um, and then if it's with other investors, it's probably similar. It's like I run a um like an events holding company, and we have this conference and we have these dinners and these traveling mansion concepts. And I also angel invest, and I'm a very small check, but I'd love to like participate in whatever you're looking at. And so it's in service of the audience in front of me. And I think on LinkedIn it just says a tech events host and investor or something, and then it says X whatever X Meta, just to give me a little
Yeah.
credibility. Because some people see the profile, the cartoon profile, and they see like tech events host, and they think like this guy's a meme or like AI. So I just try to give myself a little credibility there.
I like that. It's really smart. So can we just like outline all the different buckets of what you do and how you spend your time? And then,
Yeah.
well, because I feel like there's 2 aspects to you, right? There's like the creator aspect, you like have the newsletter and all that, and then there's like the business aspect, and I'm sure, and then there's angel investing. So maybe let's like do the broad buckets, and then we can dig into the business, which is the main thing that I want to chat about.
Yeah, so there's a few different buckets. You nailed it. First is the creator stuff, and I have an audience of about 150K across socials
Sick.
and newsletter. And that's really like personal brand, personal blog, but I'm also talking mostly about the events I host. And I think that's the main reason people follow me. There's a small community of people that is like younger students and younger entrepreneurs who follow me for the actual advice, but it's mostly events driven. We have the sort of events or experience bucket, which is a holding company of different events brands. And so we have the mixers that are 1,000-person parties and events that we host every month. And those are open to everyone. And those tend to be more of like the operator type audience, like the software engineer or the product manager. Those are called Andrew's Mixers. I've just never changed the name. We have the Junto dinners, which is 2 to 3 times a month. We host 30 founders and CEOs. And then we sort of sell sponsorships on that. We have a annual conference that I do with my friend Encore, the founder of Teachable and Carry. That's about 3,000 people, and it's a conference business. And then I won't get into it, but we have a few other smaller brands like a mansion we rent out in different cities. And I'm working on this new retreat concept, and we partnered with another organization to take over this 300-room resort, which we'll announce soon. But that's the events bucket. And then um, there's the investing. So I invest out of my LLC, and so that's angel investing. Um, I've done about 20 investments there, but also I do I'm a venture partner at a fund as well. And so I just group all that. I mean, it's 2 separate entities, but I group all that under the activities of investing. And then the last one is sort of a catch-all, and that's any like tiny project incubations, whether we're building an in-house algo for matchmaking people at the events, or I'm just doing a bit of advisory and coaching. So there's sort of 4 distinct buckets.
Damn. I feel like there's a million different ways I want to take this conversation, but the first is like, how do you have time for it all? How do you kind of like segment your time, or just make it all happen. I feel like the events alone is like literally a full-time job. And so
Yeah.
like how do you have time to create and then, do all these other things?
Yeah. So it's all a flywheel, and then so it's like the distribution feeds into the events, and so a really clear example of that is all the content I put out there on my socials and in my newsletter that drives attention to the events, and it drives attendance, and it drives sponsorships and sales, and all our sales and all our sponsorships have been inbound to date, at least 99% of them.
It's awesome.
Um, the back end of the events, I have some folks in my team. There's two ways we do them. I'm like less in like the planning and operations and logistics. We have members of our team that help with executing all that, and then oftentimes we'll partner with a co-host or another vendor that does a lot of the logistics. And that alone lets us do over 100 events a year for 20,000 people. We just have this playbook and we have this partnership framework that works at scale. And then so I'd say I'd spend like on the event side, I'm probably spending most of my time talking to partners and sort of the creative design of events concepts and putting speakers on stage and that sort of thing. So it's more like that higher level kind of design work.
Yeah. I like the idea of the flywheel because the one of the questions that I had for you is like you do all these events, and I was a party promoter in San Francisco, so I know how difficult it is to get people to show up. But
Yeah.
without having like that online presence, the email, the social, the partners, it gets really difficult to get people to show up, and then the events look weak, and then people don't want to show up to the next one, or it's hard to land a sponsor. So it makes
Mm,
sense. It makes sense what you're saying. The obvious question here is like, how do you make money? And I think you kind of said it there, but can you dig into partnership sponsors? How do you land them? And any
yeah.
advice for people who are kind of trying to land a partnership?
Yeah. So 90% of our, broadly speaking, 90% of our revenue is events sponsorships and brand sponsorships. And then the remaining 10% is tickets. We only sell tickets to the annual conference we do. And that's because it comes with like food and a whole day of programming. Otherwise, all the dinners we host are free. When we rent out a mansion and we do events throughout the day, those are all free to attend. We think of our sponsors as, obviously as our customers who are looking to reach their target buyer. And
Hmm.
so it's a classic B2B events business where a lot of these law firms and startup banks and dev shops and recruiting companies, design companies, dev agencies, there's a whole long tail of companies like this who are looking to sell to the early stage CEO and founder. And so our objective is to create a format that is compelling enough for these founders to come over and over again and to give them some sort of value so that they leave feeling like, oh, like I was not only really fun, but also incredibly, valuable to the organization where the sponsors can get access to the room, build relationships with these founders, and then maybe sell them down the road. And so we try to find sponsors who've mastered the art of relationship selling,
Yeah,
and we invite them to participate over and over again. We have contracts that we sort of sell up front. So a lot of our partnerships are annual contracts, and we find
smart.
that de-risks, the classic creator problem is that you're selling brand sponsors each month. And it's stressful and it's just like this endless treadmill that you want to get off. So we try to do it over an annual basis.
It's also not great for the business that is sponsoring either, right? Whereas like if they do an annual partnership, maybe they won't see any like fruits of their labor at the beginning of the partnership, like the first month or two,
Yeah.
but then towards month 8 or 9, a big client comes through or a big partnership comes through on their part. Yeah, I see that never ending treadmill for creators all the time, and I'm like, I want to
Yeah.
avoid that as much as possible. So when I eventually do start monetizing like this entire like media business, I want it to be like long-term partnerships as possible.
Mm.
Um, just because I don't see it making sense to do a shill in a newsletter or like a one-off pod promotion or something like that.
Yeah, and it never
Um,
works. Like, I mean, maybe if they're incredible at converting, you know, sort of top funnel, um, but yeah, like for things that have an ACV of a couple $100,000, you can't sell that. You can't. It's very rare to convert that with just one newsletter plug or
yeah,
one tiny event sponsorship. You need repetition over time, and there's probably data out there that supports that. They need to see you and trust you and sort of have the rapport with you over the span of weeks, if not months, to be willing to spend $300,000 with you.
Yeah, we had Justin Moore, the sponsorship guy, on the podcast. And he was teaching me, like, one of the best things you can do as a creator is like position what your offer as like a package. So, like a
Mm,
6 month or 12 month package, and then spread across different mediums. So one medium could be like events, another could be like the social audience that you have, another could be the email audience that you have, maybe an in-person or like a virtual talk that you have with the founder, and
mm,
then offer them individually, but then package them all together for like a higher tier, which is great for you, and I think is great for the business that you're working with as well, just because you get more exposure across the audience.
mm.
Do you do those types of partnerships as well, or is it mostly just like the event itself?
We do. So we do events, and then we do like newsletter and LinkedIn. I try not to just do newsletter and LinkedIn, just because our core business is the events.
Sure.
So normally we'll throw in like the news, the internet or the digital placements as a complimentary add-on to the package if they've
That's
already
nice.
committed to a bunch of events.
Yeah. We chatted about this a bit, but how do you truly get people to show up? Is it all like the newsletter and social? Do you have some sort of, like paid, or I don't know, another mechanism? Because you said one of the events you do is 1,000 people a month. Like that's a
Mm,
lot of people. And I know you're in New
yeah.
York, which there's a lot of people there willing to go out. But yeah, how do you promote and like reach this particular audience of founders and get them to show up to all of these events?
Yeah, it's primarily email and word of mouth.
Wow.
I started off with LinkedIn and Twitter, and I would put these lead magnet type things out there where
Yeah.
I would say, "Hey, I'm hosting this event." I would put a picture of a really nice rooftop, which was the actual venue, by the way,
Yeah, I
and I'd be
remember
like,
those.
"Comment if you want to come." Yeah, and that worked so well. And I had a few thousand followers, but I was generating hundreds of thousands of impressions. And I mean, recently Twitter has like just not worked for me at all.
Yeah, we were
I
chatting
think
about that yesterday.
yeah, and you mentioned something that was interesting that they're favoring more culturally relevant, topics or things that are more controversial. And I don't, my last post was best coffee shops in New York. I post stuff mostly about New York or my events, and so my Twitter hasn't been performing as well, and so now it's all through email. And I look at the amount of shares on my Luma page, and it's always like I think like 10-20% of the attendees are just through net new shares. So that's our main channel. Luma also has like a event discovery feature, and I think like 5% of people probably find us through that, but it's mostly through my email distribution.
Dude, Luma is underrated as a distribution outlet. I know you said like only 5 or 10% of the people come to your, or like, find out about your events, but we hosted an event in Hollywood, what was it, like 2 weeks ago. And every person that I met, I asked them, how'd you find out about this event? How'd you find out about this event? And it came out down to three main buckets. One bucket was like, I saw you post about it online somewhere, or I saw somebody post about it. The other was my friend told me about it. And so, or I found out about it in a WhatsApp, like somebody shared it with me basically. And the third bucket, which was probably like a third of the people that showed up, said, I woke up and I scrolled Luma and it was at the top of the page and it looked cool,
Hmm.
so I showed up. So like we had 300 people RSVP. I would guess like 80 to 100 people found it just from the
Wow.
Luma account.
Yeah.
We did get featured as like what's happening in LA, which is
Mm.
which is really nice. But I think like building out your Luma, like if you're in the events business or like a creator trying to get into more IRL experiences, like building out your Luma presence,
Yeah.
is low key like underrated, because then they can see like all the events you posted on your page. It kind of adds to
Yeah.
the credibility. Um, so
Dude,
yeah,
Luma
finding these
is
like low key like distribution outlets that are not as popular, but that guaranteed work, because people are
mm,
searching on they're searching like a social feed almost, like Eventbrite back in the
yeah.
day.
Yeah. Yeah, you're spot on. Luma is most underrated, not only distribution platform, but just like product.
It's
They're
great.
so low key. I know the founder, and he just I've asked to like write a check, and they're not flashy or any. They're not like on Twitter or anything. They just like quietly doing a
Crush it.
great job, quietly
Yeah, I love
crushing
it.
it.
I
Yeah,
really, really like the product. It's super clean, easy to use. This is
yeah.
not sponsored by Luma, but we love what you're doing. All right. So why events? Like and maybe you can talk a little bit about your background and how you got here, but I'm just curious, like why events? Why not virtual memberships or virtual things? How did you kind of land on this niche that you kind of carved out for yourself?
The short answer is I stuck to what I know best and what I do best. And so a bit about my background. I started off my career in tech, and so I was doing product at Google, and analytics and strategy at Facebook for a couple of years. And I moved to America for the first time in 2020. Moved to New York in 2020 when
Where,
everyone had left the city. There was a
where were
mass
you before that?
exodus. Before I was in Canada for a few years, and I
Gotcha.
spent most of my childhood in Asia. So I was born in Hong Kong. I lived in Taiwan. I lived in Shanghai, China. That was about 18 years, and then I moved to Canada for school, and then I moved here in 2020.
Gotcha. And then so you said 2020. Like what happened there?
2020, and like all of my friends had left, and so I had no community. I knew no one here. I had no professional network aside from my Facebook recruiter at the time who'd brought me in, and I just started. And I mean, I was just super lonely, so I started going on Reddit and Twitter and started asking people to hang out and get coffee. And over time, I started meeting really cool people. So I would gather them these small meetups and just be so intentional in the curation. These were like 6 to 8 person meetups with the best people I knew. I did that at scale and over again. And then one day, one of the co-founders of one of the largest language learning apps came, and I was like, "Holy crap! Like I've never met who I assumed to be a billionaire before." And I just sort of built on that muscle and started trying to invite more and more of these prominent people to my events. And I think it caught the eye of some of these banks that are looking to sell to those founders, and they offered me a sponsorship deal. And from there, it's history. I quit Google 1.5 years ago, sort of built out the sponsorship function, made it and then made it into a business is sort of I guess the short version of it.
When did you decide to leave Google? Were you doing these events kind of for free, and then you got the check from the business I wanted to sponsor, and then you're like, wow, this is good money. I could kind of like leave now because I'm making X percent of my salary. Or were you kind of doing this hustle on the side and making money, and then you reached a certain amount of your salary, and then you decided to quit?
Yeah, I wish I could have done that because that's the conventional advice for leaving a big company. But at the time when I had left Google, I was making $0, and the reason I was making $0
Wow.
is because I was on a visa that didn't allow me to make any money outside Google. I could only
Yeah.
get paid by Google. Anything else would get me deported.
Gotcha.
Basically, there were a few things happening at the time. One was I had a sort of a little feeling that this could be a big business, or big in the sense of call it SMBs. This could sustain myself and maybe a few other people.
Yeah.
Two was that the visa stuff was like really triggering because I had left Facebook to go to Google to get a green card, and Google had promised me one, but they had gone back on it for different reasons. And then third, I was just at this point in my life. I think I was in my mid 20s where I was like, I just want to try something and take a swing. And I've been so risk averse my entire life working at Facebook and Google and blah, blah. So why not take a bit of risk? And so all that led to me pursuing this new visa that took about 8 months. And right before I left Google, I just went really hard at the sponsorship sales. I did so many cold, um, well, not necessarily cold outreach, but I would reach back out to people that had participated in my events before
The,
and just try to, scope out what a sponsorship deal would look like and what a contract. And I'd never done contracts or sponsorships at the time, really.
how'd you kind of
Um,
figure that out? Like to ensure that you didn't get gypped, or like,
mm.
leave too much on the table or overcommit to stuff. Or maybe that stuff did happen, and you just kinda, like, made it work either way.
No, I remember at the time I was like so worried because there's two risks. One was like income risk, and then the second one was visa risk, and they were
Mm,
correlated because if I couldn't make any, so my business I can only stay in the country if my business does at least 100K a year. And so if I don't do anything less than that, USCIS will kick me out.
holy
That's sort of
shit.
the rule
So
on the visa. And so I was like, all right, I have to like sell really hard, and I can't take these small swing. I can't sell like 5K, 10K sponsorship deals. And so I would just ask for like the biggest numbers I could. And I was like, and I would sell 6 month packages, and I would just throw like the randomest biggest number out there and see who would bite. And a
like,
lot
what's
of
the number
people,
back then? Like 50K for, like, 6 events or something like that, and then you're just
yeah,
kinda, like, shooting and praying?
The first few checks were like, and this is, by the way, I'd never made $1 before in my life by myself. So I think the first check was like, it was like 52, 250 or something like that.
You
And
you
then
wanted to
and then
change the you wanted to make it not a flat number, right? You wanted to make
yeah.
it like look like a random number.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, like 62.50 for like 6 months or something like that. And then I would, so it's, I think they call it value-based pricing where
Yep.
you sense like where their budget is. And I offered, a bunch of these deals to different people. And I think like post quitting Google in the first 2 months, I did about like over 400K. And like
Holy
the
shit.
margins were like 80 or 90%. And a lot of the partners renewed and got value out of it. But over time we kind of refined the pricing a little bit because
Mhm.
I was like killing myself because I would be like, "I'll do 20 events for you," or whatever, and I was just killing myself and my
It's
team.
exhausting, yeah, because it's like the events are physical, right? It's not like you can do virtual stuff and then, like, be out. It's like you gotta plan, you gotta get these venues, you gotta promote it, you gotta be there in person, gotta do
Yeah,
cleanup, you gotta do follow-up, you gotta, like
yeah,
so overcommitting to a shit ton of them seems like, seems pretty exhausting.
and at the time, like, it was on a screen, I was in a contract, and I'm like, "Oh, like, this 52K number sounds good, whatever, like 40 events, we'll figure it out." And then when you get into it, it's like, "Oh my god, I have
Like
4
4
events in
in.
a week." Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I still love I love like, to this day, I love going to these events.
Do you
So,
Yeah, I was gonna ask this later, but I just asked now. Are you introverted, extroverted? Like, I personally would exhaust myself if I did as many events as you did. I used to think I was more extroverted, but I think I'm more like ambivert. Like
mm,
depending on the vibe of everybody around me, and like if people are down, then I'm kind of more shy. If people are like up and lively, I'm more up and excited. But I still find
mm,
myself like pretty exhausted after doing like a 4 hour event, and I need like a day or two to just kind of recover.
mm.
Do you feel like your personality just kind of works with the business that you're in, or did you kind of force yourself or train yourself or anything that you did to kind of get here?
I'm more introverted. I used to be more extroverted, but it's funny because like extroversion in China is very different than extroversion in like America.
Yeah,
People here are very outgoing, and it's like a different level of extroversion. It's much more intense on a scale. And so I was very extroverted in China because people there are very reserved, and so I could spend time around people all day. But then in New York, it's like one of the social capitals of the world, and it takes a lot of energy to sort of like you stay in touch, and even some conversations are so intense. So I've become more introverted since moving here, but I've found a way that works for me. I'm in a lot of these events and I'm asking questions, but I'm listening a lot. Versus, I know a lot of other hosts that will talk a lot and they're very good at telling their story and charming the room. And I suspect that takes a ton of energy. I don't do that. I don't know if that's a net positive or negative for the business, but I've just chosen my path of being a better listener and more intentional sort of conversationalist.
yeah. That's another question I was going to ask you is around like how do you be a great host, and do you think the host should be like almost a center, not center of attention, but like the main figure at an event? Like my style for these events that I've been hosting, just like random meetups in LA, is like I try not to talk. I try to be the connector, like
Mm,
the dot connector. Like, hey, I just met this person. I learned their entire story, what they're building. Oh, snap. I talked to this one person, 10 minutes ago over here. You guys got to connect. Or like, you're in crypto and this person's in crypto. Like, you guys are
mm,
kind of building similar things. You guys should connect. But I try to like remove myself as much as possible because like they're not really there to see me. They're there to like meet other people. So
yeah.
I
Well, you
don't know if
never
that's the
know.
right way or the wrong way or like if it's the
Yeah.
best. So
You never know, like, some of them are probably there to see you, just because you have a big audience, and they're probably fans. So I'd guess, like, 10% of the people there, or maybe more, are there just to meet you and, like, be in your presence. That's what I've realized as well. But I think the traditional host is, like, you walk into the room, and they're very charismatic, and they introduce you to a bunch of people, and they make a big speech, and they sort of they inspire the room with this certain level of energy, and that's really hard to do, especially as a younger person. A lot of
yeah,
these hosts have been doing it for decades, and they're very naturally charismatic. But I found that maybe the newer way of doing that is through these different mechanics. So, for example, doing some sort of AI algorithm matching ahead of time, or putting people in groups and in email threads and groups ahead of time based on specific reasons.
oh, that's so
Um,
smart.
and so there's all these ways, different methods we've experimented with, even at the scale of 1,000-person events, that have helped people um, feel welcome, even though I'm not into room. even though my staff's not in the room. We just figured out those ways, and honestly, some Gen Zs and some younger millennials prefer it because I think a lot of Gen Zs. I'm sort of generalizing a whole cohort of people, but from my experience, a lot of Gen Zs are less confrontational and they prefer to have some of these tools and crutches to help them navigate big rooms.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you feel like your business when you first launched it could have worked if you weren't in NYC? Like if you were in Miami or even like
Yeah.
San Francisco or New York?
Oh, it'd be much bigger if it was in San Francisco. I'm coming to San Francisco in a few weeks, and just based on sponsor outreach and the willingness to commit certain dollars and the density of founders, I mean, like, the main business is around founders and early stage CEOs. There's just so much more density there, and there's more service providers and more of our customers there. So I think it'd be a lot bigger in San Francisco. I think it would work in other cities as well, Austin, LA, Miami, just maybe on a little smaller, slightly smaller scale.
If there's like more business requests in SF, would you consider moving there? Or like why are you still based in NYC? And I know you do these global events. It's not just
Mm.
New York as your main pocket. Like you do events everywhere. But yeah, why stay there?
Yeah, I think I think of my business, my life as life first and in business second. The business is to enable me to have an extraordinary life, and so I wouldn't, trade off my favorite city just to grow my business by even by 3x. I just I love spending time in New York, and I don't love San Francisco. That's also it's like a net negative versus a very positive thing.
Hmm, really interesting. And I guess it's a flight away, right? It's what, 4.5 hours. You could plan something, be in and out in a weekend. It's not that big of a deal as long as it's not the cadence is not super high where you're doing it every single week or anything like that. Then it becomes
Yeah, yeah.
annoying.
Few times a year, totally fine. In, do an event, come out and meet a bunch of people, and so yeah, you could do both. I think.
How many events did you clock last year? Or I assume last year was probably the most that you did.
Yeah, over 100. We lost
Wow.
track over 100, but 100 over 100, and then I think the attendee number was 20,000 people, over 20,000.
As big and as small as how many? Like as small as like a 5-person dinner and then as big as like a 1,000-person conference or
The smallest is probably a 12-person dinner. So I do these salon dinners for GTM leaders and marketers. Largest was probably around 3 to 4,000.
how many people do you have on your team and like how do you not lose track of all the different people that you're reaching? Founders, marketers, you have the sponsors too, inbound,
Mm.
outbound. So yeah, just like operationally, how do you run your business and how do you keep on track of everything?
Yeah, so you could really run this business with one person.
Hmm.
Like, funny enough, you could run this business. I've done, I think the first few months is run with one person. And the reason you can run it with one person is because you can have a bunch of 1099s and offshore people. And so right now I have two people offshore who do the CRM thing, and like they manage emails and the marketing funnels and some of the analytics and data enrichment, which is really key for event curation. And then I have a full-time um, chief of staff type person that I just promoted to the head of partnerships and community.
Tick.
And then we have some sort of part-time operations help. We have some fellows that we onboarded, which is basically these part-time. I think you engage with the post, but
Yeah.
very smart people. We have this guy from Microsoft who does product. We have a private equity person, and we have an operations person. And their objective is to sort of just give higher level insights and feedback into the business and just help represent. They're all very friendly and charismatic. They help represent the Five brand, and then we have a huge volunteer team. So 700 person volunteer team that
Wow.
are sort of like, it's a community of its own called the A League, and they'll sub in whenever we need some support.
How did you get those 700 people to raise their hand? Is it via email or social or they attended an event and they're like, how can I help? And you just kept track of
Yeah,
them?
exactly. People love volunteering. A good example is Tony Robbins' event series. He has volunteers run the whole thing or for a big part of it, and the volunteers pay to be a part of that program because it comes
Whoa.
with a title, it comes with training. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure my volunteers would pay, not that I would charge them, but if we provided some value in the form of like confidence coaching, and maybe your ultimate test is you have to go run this event and talk to 50 people at the event or something like that. If you send out an email a week before your event and you put out a Google form and you say, "I'm looking for 3 volunteers to help me," I guarantee you'll get at least 20 people.
That's awesome. I was gonna ask you, like, what's the incentive for them to volunteer? Like, do they get like distribution, or they get access to speak to everybody, or a T-shirt or something? But that's crazy that the perception is the other way around. People are like wanting to volunteer and eager to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard for, you and me to see because we're in these rooms and we're hosting events without much effort, I assume, like, very minimal effort, but for a lot of people, that takes a ton of effort and it's a ton of investment, and so for them to have an opportunity to be in the room, to be a part of something that
Mm,
they admire and respect, to be part of the creator economy,
it's
to
cool.
do you a favor, that's worth so much to them, and there's sort of bigger picture play of belonging. They wanna feel like
Cool.
they're part of something, and so it's hard to have, like, 1 or 2 volunteers, but if you have a group of them, they feel like they're a part of something, and a lot of our volunteers have gone on to work together or become friends or hang out outside our events, so it's really it serves everyone in the ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a win-win. Win for you, win for the business, win for them.
Yeah.
You have a favorite event that you've hosted or a series that you do?
I really like the annual conference that I do with Encore.
Yeah. Was
So
the
it's called
out of
the O.
office? Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, it's a wordplay. So a lot of people think it's out of office. It actually stands for owners, as in business owners, operators, and outliers.
Yeah.
Basically, just the very ambitious founders, but also the people working in 9 to 5s who are super ambitious. And the reason we did we called it OOO is because the first year we did it, it was on a Saturday, and so we wanted people to be that ambitious that they were willing to go to a full day event on their break on the weekend. And that's how we would curate for the most ambitious people. I like that because it's a lot of the people who've been on stage or have been role models of mine or people that have followed along. Sahil Bloom, I've been following his journey for a few years, Sam Parr. And so it's sort of our manifestation of the people that have inspired us to become entrepreneurs and I love being on stage and I love sort of practicing public speaking and so it's so fulfilling on many fronts.
What's the value proposition for the people that attend? And you said that this one's paid, so people got to pay and go on a Saturday and get to New York City. What do they get in return? Is it the network or the speaking and kind of just the vibe in general?
Yeah, it's a traditional conference type event, so they get to see a full day of speakers. They get to meet. We do a bit of matchmaking with different groups, so they get to surround themselves with other people that are in the same mindset of taking big swings and taking a risk to come to an event like this on a Saturday. And there's a lot of like elements around it too. So we do a party, we do a dinner, and a bunch of other programming. But the key thing is they commit to something where they will leave with insight on how to either build a business or scale their existing work.
Interesting. Not sure if you want to answer this because it might encourage competitors in different cities, but I didn't realize like events were so like could be so profitable.
Mhm,
Do you have any like hacks or advice or tips or things that you do to kind of get deals on like I assume like the event venue is like one of the most expensive things you pay for or don't pay for.
mm,
So just in general, like how do you like make good profits on an event? Is it just like getting great
mm,
sponsors and making sure that like the delta between what you're paying and what you're getting in
mm,
return is really high? Or do you find like, these event venues and just lock them in for long-term
mm.
periods? Or a mix of things?
Yeah, so, you know, with a focus of sort of maximizing top line revenue and optimizing costs, we have a few different strategies. So, first of all, in terms of sponsorship, we are probably a little more expensive than some of the other communities. And the
Mm,
reason we're more expensive is because a lot of communities get sponsors and they just throw them as a logo on the wall and they invite them to the event and they say a few lines of opening remarks and they share the emails after. That's the traditional playbook for event sponsorships. If you go to Luma and you look at any of the sponsors, that's the treatment they're getting. But if you think of why the sponsors are there, they're there to build a relationship with the buyers in the room. Um, and not just be a logo on the wall. And so we have this whole playbook where we take care of the sponsors very well. We provide introductions. We give them a breakdown of everyone's everyone who's in that room and what their goals are, what the objectives are, even to the detail of how much, the scale of their company is, how many employees, much money they've raised, revenue metrics, to the extent that these founders are willing to share them. Obviously, we respect the founder's privacy as well. But when the folks get into the room, they're able to build these relationships in a more targeted way. They know exactly who to talk to. We seat them next to the specific people that we believe will be the highest conversion accounts for them. So that's one, and that's why people are willing to, maybe pay us 50% over market rate and renew over and over again, because we treat that like a sales channel for them and not just like a logo on the wall. On the cost optimization side, we spend so much time negotiating with venues. Like, sometimes I'm like, "Is this a waste of time?" But at the end of the day, I tell myself, "No, it's not, because this is my, cost of goods sold." And so I spend a lot of time with, hotel and restaurant operators and GMs of these different properties, negotiating kickbacks. And, one example is, we worked with a hotel for 6 months, this 4-star hotel in New York, and the typical event host would have to pay 15 grand per event to host at the hotel. We negotiated it to a point where they were paying us 6 grand for every event we would host,
Wow.
because I was able to sell them on the value of the audience. And I think what that took was that I invited the one of the C-suite members to come to one of our events, and at the event, I introduced that person to just three of the most valuable people in my network, and I asked them to come as a favor to me, and he
Yeah.
was like, "This is worth more than." I don't want to be commoditized as a creator or event host, so I could tell in this person's eyes, or like, this is worth more than just a number on paper, just one event attendee.
Yeah, because in their eyes, they're like literally like one of these people here can come and host the whole, 10 years worth of events, or like something else that could be but like potentially good for the business, for the brand, or
Yeah,
like another partnership down the line. So not even event related, is potential upside
yeah.
for them.
Yeah, or like one person that could buy this whole hotel.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
so it's just that we wanna make sure, like, we're very clear up front that these aren't the regular types of people that are going to your Thursday night parties at the hotel. These are highly curated decision makers in New York that manage these budgets in excess of, tens of millions of dollars.
It's awesome.
So we work a lot on optimizing the bottom line too.
It's cool. Thank you for sharing that. What's like the future of your business? And maybe you can kind of break down since you launched it. I know you at first it was Andrew's Mixers, then you kind of formalized the business. And you have like, the umbrella company and then all the sub companies. Where do you see it moving in the future?
So I think from where AI is headed, and my personal experience with the Twitter algorithms not working in our favor, and just click through rates, open rates decreasing. You probably have a better sense of this, but anecdotally, my gut feeling um, is that digital channels are going to be potentially less effective over time, just with the volume of AI content that's coming in, and AI avatars, um, and a bunch of spam. And so right now, I've talked to quite a few companies at the early stage who have said that events are their best channel, their best sales channel. And I believe that that's just gonna continue to compound, and getting your buyers into a room for dinner or at a cocktail reception might be the best performing way, to convince someone to buy your product versus sending them a cold email. And so the reason we rebranded from my name to Fibe in the last year is because we wanna create, this experiential company that can help both enterprise companies and startups reach their buyers through events. And
Mm,
so what you might see over time is vertical specific event formats or communities. Now it's mostly around the idea of founders and CEOs at early stage, but there's opportunities for CMOs, CTOs, heads of engineering, media buyers, and just everything across different ecosystems. So there's a horizontal sort of play here. I think that's where we're headed toward. There might be the one thing I'm not very good at, which you're great at, is the media component. Maybe there's a play down the road where we partner with a media entity, or maybe we buy a newsletter or buy distribution to help us get into a specific vertical, i.e., CMOs by marketing newsletter. But that's where my head is at right now. And honestly, there's a point where I was falling for the shiny object syndrome, and I was seeing all my friends build AI companies, and I was like, "Oh shit, should I be doing events when everyone's doing AI stuff? Like, is this the worst bet I can make right now?" But in the last honestly, in the last few months, after seeing anecdotally some of these things that are happening on Twitter and LinkedIn, I'm like, "No, I should maybe double down on the IRL stuff and just wait for the right time," because I believe that some of these companies are gonna come running to us when they realize their other channels are not working.
Dude, it reminds me of the midwit meme. Like, because I feel similar to you in the sense that like I quit my full time career to launch a podcast and like this media company and a newsletter and be a creator. Like, it's the simplest stupid thing, but well, like everybody's like building like the next $10 million ARR or MRR AI company. But, like, simplicity works, like, you've already proven that the business works. You're
Mhm,
seeing, like, the metrics on the back end. You're seeing the momentum, the trend going up. You're great at doing it. Just because it's, like, a simple business doesn't mean it can't be a great business. Like, I'm very similar to you in the sense that, like, we see this, like, shiny object, and you're like, "Wow, everybody's doing it. It's really hot. Maybe I should just, like, build a social media AI tool and help people, like, crush it on social." And it's like, yeah,
mm,
but that's not really like my specialty. Yeah, I'm good at social, but I'm not like the AI guy. I like creating content. I like having cool conversation with people. Like, I've been doing this whole media thing for like since I was like, I don't know, 16, 17. I'm like 33 now. 30, I'll
mm,
be 33 next week. So like it's something that I've
cool.
just refined over like so many years. Like why not just do the simple thing and do it really well?
Yeah.
Um
Yeah, and
but it just
that's pro yeah,
it reminds me of the middle meme, right? It's like we're on the
yeah.
ends of the spectrum, and then everybody in the middle is just like following the shiny object.
And that's, like, conviction. I think when you talk about conviction in Silicon Valley, I always my head always goes to, like, conviction in this new space or, like, this new idea or this big idea. Maybe it's space, maybe it's, underground utility mapping, whatever it is. But maybe conviction in sort of our world is what's already working, is gonna compound over time because of our expertise and because of where the world is heading.
Yeah. Is there like any virtual aspect of the business that you've considered doing aside from like the media business, like a membership or like a gold club membership for like 100 or 1,000 of like your people that love going to these and want like exclusive access or something
Mm.
like that? I feel like you've proven the IRL stuff that works really well. I just feel like is there any virtual membership piece that you can like tie in, or you feel like that's gonna like distract you away from what's working?
There might be. I honestly don't believe I can offer enough value to the founders right now to
Mm,
warrant a monthly membership.
gotcha.
And it's hard to pilot because the two most important relationships right now are with the founders. And and for the events and also for the on the investing front and advisory front, and then with my sponsors and customers. And like I think if I was going to pilot a membership, there's a risk of harming my relationship with one of those, one of those groups. Um, so not until I've sort of business cased out a model that works, or I believe that I can contribute value to these founders that is beyond what everyone else is doing. I don't want to just start another founder member club because
Yeah,
everyone's starting
those
one
are
now,
popping
and
up
it's
a lot.
yeah, and they're all very similar. And so I just don't wanna run where everyone else is running, to be honest, which might be a foolish thing to do, but, we'll see.
If there's anybody that would crush it at that, I think it'd be you because you have the brand, you have the reputation. But you're right, everybody is launching these, so you're just competing against everybody else. Whereas you've kind of carved out a niche for yourself. You're known as doing these in-person things, and you have great, like you said, great relationships with your sponsors and founders and everybody. So I think what you're doing is probably smart. How big do you want this business to grow? Like, well, I think one of the things that you said really spoke to me in terms of like you want your life to come first and your business not necessarily second, but like your business fuels the life that you want to live.
Hmm.
Um, so at what point does the business, if it grows to a certain amount or a certain number of events or a certain number of employees or a certain number like amount of annual revenue, does it become too much? Maybe not the money aspect, but
Mm.
like at what point does it become
Too
too
much
big,
money.
too much to handle?
Hmm. I don't know yet. In its current form, I think this business has the potential to do, let's say 3 to 5 top line a year without me expanding to too many new product lines or doing anything that is out of the ordinary for us. If I was going to lean into the horizontal community aspect, so building out a series for CMOs and CTOs, then that could take a life of its own and scale beyond that. I'm very happy right now, and it's working. And economically, I'm very happy. So I don't really have ambitions to scale it that much, to be honest. Which is why I'm not like hiring so many people. I'm not like massively investing in future growth. I'm just kind of doing what is working, having a bit of fun with it, and just staying on my toes because I think everything I said earlier about predictions for the future, I'm just waiting for one of those signals to pop up so I can decide where to take this thing.
I think that's really smart. I think if there's an aspect or an area that you could probably like grow is the media side because it
Yeah.
doesn't, media scales really nicely. It doesn't require an additional team of 10 to manage. You could just hire somebody part-time to be, a separate newsletter writer or like buy a newsletter, buy a media company that already has a following and
Mm,
then dump some of the profits that you're making into growth there. So you grow it from 50,000 subs or followers to 500,000. And then that just makes the event side of the business so much more valuable, because then
uh,
it's like, hey, if you want to partner with me, we give you X, Y, and Z, but we also give you, brand reach to this amount of people.
mm,
And it wouldn't require a ton more work or human labor than what you're doing now. But I think what
mm.
you're doing is right now is honestly really smart.
I agree with you. I'm so bad at the media thing, and um, I've experimented with podcasts and short form video, and I actually have some gear now. Because like Prime Day, I just bought a camera and I bought a bunch of stuff.
Nice.
But I'm curious, like how much if I was going to start a podcast beyond the initial scoping and like figuring out the concept, how much more time do you think I would need per week to run a podcast that does 2 episodes a month?
Not that much, honestly. I mean, it depends on how you structure the pod. If you're gonna do like these crazy in-depth interviews where you're meeting the person for the first time, then that could be 10 hours of research. But
Wow.
if you're
Okay.
doing the style that I'm doing, where almost everybody that I've had on the pod, I've been following for years. I know them personally, or
Mm,
they're in a niche where I can attack them with questions just out of my curiosity, and the conversation will still go well because I'm
mm,
asking them about the business. I'm asking about growth and distribution, which I know really well. They're in tech. I've been in tech for 10 years. So it feels like a
mm,
normal conversation, and I can do very little to no prep work. It's the ones where like I don't know the person very well. I don't know their business very well. And I have to listen to like 4 or 5 podcasts. I have to go like
mm,
search all of their social media, um, read all of their old newsletters to find like little gems. Those become like it takes me a week to prep for.
mm.
But if you
Okay.
position it more of like curious conversations with founders that you're meeting at these events, then it could be as little as like a 1 hour prep, 1 hour on the call, and then maybe or like the interview, and then 1 hour post to just review the content, and then ship it
Mm,
out to somebody else to do post production. So you literally
mm,
just on Riverside, you set it up, get there 5 minutes before, record, and then after just like, hey, send me all the stuff once it's ready. Send me headlines, send me clips, send me everything. Let me review it for an hour, and then publish for me. I don't want to touch it at all. So that's kind of
wow.
how like
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of how I run this pod. Honestly, I couldn't do it
Yeah.
without Caleb.
I might hit you up for that because that like you've done a great job and like you've grown quickly on YouTube and like that's exactly like the level of quality I'd want if I was going to do a pod. So it's good to know that you've found a process that makes it fairly simple for you.
It's one of those things that it could easily take up all of your time, like 40 hours a week, or if you develop a process and you be strict with yourself
Mm,
and not allow it to, then it could be as little as 5 hours per episode.
mm. Okay, cool. Good to
And it
know.
has a ton of upside, right? Like media scales nicely. You put money on top of it on a newsletter or pod or whatever, then it grows
Mm,
really well. So another question that I had around, and I'll get you out of here soon, is like how else are you using tech or AI or um, interesting tactics with your events? I really like the idea of like the newsletter or email grouping that you said.
mm.
Um, that's like the first time I've heard that, which is really cool. But any other tools are you using or interesting tactics?
Yeah, so as you imagine, I'm meeting a lot of people for the first time at these events, And so for me, it's incredibly valuable to have a tool that gets me a download of this person within 3 minutes. And so I use this tool called distill.fyi. It was founded by my friend Russ, who is the founder of DocSend. This is his next company.
Cool.
And I've been using it for the last year. And I also send out people's profiles on this. It's like a people enrichment tool. I think he calls it the Wikipedia for people without a Wikipedia page. And so that's useful for me to study up on someone before I meet them. We use a lot of someone on our team built this AI matchmaking type thing in Claude. And so at when you come to a dinner, there's sort of 3 suggestions of people you should meet based on specific criteria. So that's been really helpful as well. And then a
So
lot of my
cool.
content is now done. You probably have a similar process, but a lot of my content is done with ChatGPT and Claude. I'm speaking. I think in the last 6 months, I've cut down sort of my computer work by 50%. Like I speak to my computer and my phone instead of typing. There's this other tool like I use Quora for my email inbox. We get a lot of inbound from people being like, "Can I come? Can I come? Or can I buy a ticket?" And so
Yeah.
that helps me cut it down. And I think those are probably the main things. Oh, the last thing I might mention is I use this for like sometimes when I meet with founders. It's a limitless, and it's sort of just like transcribes the conversation and gives me any takeaways. So those
You
are the main things.
Do you feel like you have
Yeah.
to tell them like, "Hey, I'm gonna record this real quick," or do they ever like look
Yeah.
at it? Like I wore the Ray-Ban, the ones, the Meta Ray-Ban glasses at my last event to take video. And like halfway through the conversation with somebody, they were like, "Oh shit, did you record all that right now?" And I was like, "No, no, no, no. I would tell you a heads up, and also a little light would pop up." But do you feel like people kind of trip out a little bit when they see it on
They
you?
do.
Yeah.
They do. I have to tell them. I did an experiment for a week where I didn't tell people, and people got pissed. Like people got pissed. So
Well,
you
especially
you
in New
have
York City where they know what it is. They're like, "That's not just a cool necklace. Like that's one of those AI devices that's recording everything you do." You know?
yeah. I've even been in elevators where people like give me a glare because they see it, and I don't even know
Oh
these
my god,
people. But
that's crazy.
there's a big cultural thing that I think we need to overcome for these devices to become popular.
I think it's simple as like a little light letting people know it's recording. Like there's those I saw on Twitter the other day, like somebody created these glasses that record nonstop with no light and no alert. So you can like live
Mm.
stream and record everything or like live stream your entire day. And people in the comments were like, "Oh man, like this is gonna get really, really messy really fast."
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Cool. Well, last
yeah.
question I have for you. I feel like events are becoming really trendy, like in real life experiences, events, conferences. We already talked about like clubs that are popping up, like founder clubs. And I feel like sometimes people honestly like put too much on their plate, like they can't really handle. But so like any advice that you have for people that are interested or thinking about like doing in real life experiences or events for the first time, but don't know
Mm,
where to start. I do think it's more difficult than people think. It's more exhausting. It's more work before, during,
yeah,
and after. Um,
yeah. There's a lot of complexity about events. The thing that's so difficult about events is that there's a lot of different variables, and they all have to work. They have to, they have to be executed perfectly at the right time for that one moment in time on the day of the event for it to
yep.
go well. You can't have it's just a lot of stuff going on day of. And so what I find is helpful is having some sort of high level framework or even like a checklist for each event. And this is the framework that we've used for to host 100 events a year. And I don't know if I have it top of my head, but it goes something along the lines of here are the 4 things you need to keep in mind when you're hosting an event. One is like the venue and the logistics. And that comes with like sub buckets of work, which is like AV and video and all those components. But that's a big logistics bucket. Number 2 is around called the branding and the context. So understanding why you want people to come and like what the whole point of the event is and what's going on during the event. And then you have called the economics. So that's sponsorships or tickets or basically how you're going to fund the event. And then the last bucket is around promotion. And so this relates to the second bucket, which is why you're having the event. But in this case, it's how do you get the word out to people to ensure that they show up. And so and I think that captures most of it. If you use this 4-step framework for all your events, you won't be missing anything. Because a lot of the time people are like, "Am I missing something? Did I forget something?" But if you just have this framework, then you can execute flawlessly.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. Breaking it down like that makes it a lot easier to kind of just mentally, map out. Is there anything I didn't ask that you think I should have asked, or anything else you wanted to share?
Hmm.
Keep in mind the audience is like, founders, creators, people building on the internet, or people that are tinkering. Maybe they have a full-time job and they want to start doing um, something on the side, or eventually full-time.
Yeah. I think for founders and creators, I alluded to this before, but my belief is that at one point, AI is not going to benefit creators in the sense that digital channels are going to be convoluted and there's going to be AI slop on LinkedIn and so you might find the effectiveness of these channels to go down. And so what I would do to sort of combat that is try something in person and show your audience or show your customers that you're a real person and build trust in the form of in-person connection. And there's no harm just trying. I think every company out there, no matter what size you are, should host at least one event a year. I don't
Yeah.
even think that's a hot take, but do it for your customers, do it for your community or your employees. But just give it a shot this year because I think it's so underrated right now.
And like the post production part of the event is like so valuable for the business, because then you get photos, you get videos, you get like almost like
Right.
social proof that you can put, on your website and parts of the sales pages and stuff like that. So I think it's a win all around. Cool, man. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for coming on, dude. It's been really cool to, see you throughout the years. I think I've been following you since you were working at Google or maybe Facebook back in the day. So finally getting to catch up as an internet friends, IRL
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. We'll have to meet in person next time you're around.
Yeah. Or if you're in LA, hit me up next time we do an
Cool.
event.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right. All right, brother.
All right.
Peace.
Take care.